Hello, how are you? I hope you're doing well. Welcome in to this space. I wanted to talk a little bit about what I have experienced over the last week in relation to these energies that are coming in. This is truly the time of miracles, of rewriting our story, the ability to rewrite our story all the way down to our DNA. And that seems impossible. How do we rewrite our DNA? Yet to understand that our DNA replicates, and that's where we insert and rewrite, is in this process of replication. These codons, these new instructions, based on our original origins of being. So I'll just talk a bit about how this is playing out in the physical, how I'm witnessing it, how I am working with my own family templates, my own family dynamics. So I spoke last week that my father had had a heart attack. And part of what is interesting about this situation now is because we're not able to go to the hospital to be with him, to speak with the doctors. There's a large gap in terms of the information that's available and the time that we have to process what's going on. So this seclusion for my entire family, but of course I'm experiencing it through myself, so I'll speak from my own perspective. This time to sit and be with the messages about his healing, about his progress, have been really truly a gift, because if we were able to go about business as usual, or even to be sitting in the hospital immersed in this energy, I would not be sitting with my own self through this process. So I spoke a bit as well, receiving the emails, the way the messages are being translated through each individual person who is outputting or expressing this message also has, or let's say they are expressing the information, it has the undertone of their own personal dynamic, their own personal templating in it as well. So it's been quite fascinating to witness and to observe the way specific people will communicate and the way that I am getting triggered via this person. And it's not just one, it's in every dynamic and every person that I'm interacting with, even when it's the doctors or the nurses, right? It's like I can feel and see very explicitly and clearly now when I'm getting triggered, where that is coming from in the programming. Obviously, I hold this within me if I'm getting triggered by it. But what's so beautiful right now is that I'm able to see the place that these people are coming from, whether it's family or staff or whatever it is, that is translating the message, right? So there's information. All it is really is information that's coming through, but it's coming through the individual person. And so it's being translated through their own programming. And then, of course, because we're all connected in this family dynamic, especially, that goes back to childhood and the wounding and the patterns that were embedded at that time, or let's say enforced at that time, the way that it is specifically triggering me. And I'm able now to look at that. And in the beginning, my emotions were all over the place, up and down. Why am I freaking out? Why am I having this reaction to this person who simply asked me to do such and such a thing, right? Like just over the top kind of, it's a pounding of energy right now that's coming through, obviously. And so being in this situation, I'm having to really like voraciously look at and address every little thing that's coming through. And of course, you know, things have kind of spiraled in the sense that in the beginning it was just a couple things and then it all kind of accumulated. So one of the ways, this was happening was realizing that when there is an illness and we feel that we cannot control the illness, the disease, that is outside of our control, we will try to control what we can, right? So that's uncontrollable. Subconsciously, then we want to be in control. And so we control the narrative. We control the way the narrative is going out into the world, this kind of thing, right? This is where we see a lot of breakdown in family communication because we can feel this control coming through, right? And so we all start to have our reactions around this. And to understand, though, that this desire to control comes from a place of wounding and a place of pain where we did not feel we were in control as children. And of course, as children, we develop patterns also to control our own narrative of what is happening to us. We're not aware. It's very subconscious because we don't have the capability to think and analyze at higher levels. Although sometimes when we go back, we realize, right, oh my God, even at that age, I was processing at a very accelerated rate, a very mature rate for what a child would be expected to understand. For the adults around us, right? We oftentimes took on that role of parent, even at a very young age, processing those emotions that we were seeing that were going unprocessed or unnoticed by the adults around us. So all of this now starts to come to the surface. And this is why in times of crisis, right? It's like fanning the flames of the little fire that was always there. But everyone starts to come and respond from the place of their wounded inner child. So I just want to give one specific example. Because really our goal, at least with my work, my purpose for being here, my purpose for working, is to help individuals heal. But it's also about the way we relate. It doesn't help if we are healed within ourselves, if we are walking around, we are surrounded by people who are not aware of their own patterns and who are predominantly, let's say, unhealed. It's a very lonely life to live. But it is about the way that our wounding relates to others and how can we manage that and actually how can we shift that. So my very first contact with my father was the day after he had his heart attack. And no one had actually spoken to him yet because, no, it was the same day, I apologize, that he had his heart attack. But no one really knew what was going on because we weren't at the hospital. I was like, well, let's just wait for the doctors to call. Let's see if he calls, because we got the message he was awake, he was out, whatever, he was up. So waiting to hear, and I finally realized, again, this control narrative that starts going, well, there's always one person who kind of is that main flow of information. And I thought, you know what? Oh gosh, I'm his daughter. I can actually call the hospital and I can just ask myself and get the answers that I need. So I did. I ended up calling the hospital. Also just making sure for my own self, right? Can I actually go visit? No, you can't come visit. Okay. But I want to ask and make sure that I know that at least I made the attempt. So I spoke to the nurse and then he's like, oh, let me, hold on, let me ask your dad for permission. I was like, oh, okay, can I talk to my dad? But I was the first person that he had talked to since his episode. And so when he got on the phone, it was so apparent that he was in shock, so unexpected. He couldn't believe what was happening to him. Because he was also told he had had silent heart attacks and all of this had gone kind of unknown, undetected. So to get the news that he had gotten to the extent of what was really going on was really shocking for him. And yet what I was picking up on in addition to that was the fear, the pain, and the suffering, not of this particular event, although it's all related, of course, but this immense strain and restriction in his voice that I could hear. The sadness, the sorrow, the grief, all of these emotions were coming up. And I was clearly picking up on, oh my goodness, and I could feel it in my own body. This is a feeling I've had before. I could never identify. I have known my relationship has always been strained with my dad. There's a weird inability to communicate with him that my other siblings don't seem to have. For me, it's always been a very painful experience to have to try to talk, because I feel like I have to either carry the conversation, or if I'm not speaking about something that is natural for him, it's very, very strained. And there's always been this like feeling of it's more painful to try to attempt to talk rather than just let it go and leave it be and don't even try to communicate. So in hearing his voice that day, that familiar feeling and sensation started to rise up in my body, and I started to panic a little bit because I thought, well, I don't know what to say to him to make him feel better. I don't know what to do in this situation. There's so much pain here, and I just wanted to. Then I started to realize this is a behavior that I will normally do, which is I want the pain to stop, so let me just think of anything else. Let's say a funny joke. Let's just get this out of here, right? Wow, huge pattern, not just for myself, but in our family, right? To let's not look at what's really going on and let's get out of the pain, right? That's always the goal. It's never to just let's not look at what's happening. It's relieving the pain, getting away from that pain, which is really everything that we do that is not beneficial in our lives. That's what it's about. It's about avoiding pain. So coming face to face with this energy and recognizing not only that, but I was clearly seeing and feeling where this came from for him in his own relationship with his dad. And again, I'm very aware of those family patterns. So I knew this already. This wasn't anything new that I was picking up on. What was new that I was picking up on, though, was let's say if you could draw energy as a schematic, like, or if the energy had a personality and a quality, or was an actual kind of person in and of itself, what would it look like? What would it show itself as? This is what I was seeing. This whole interrelated dynamic of where this came from for him, as well as how it's now relating in my daily life with my relationship with him. But also, we know that the patterning starts to show up when we become aware of it in our adult relationships. So all of these things coming to light, and then also realizing in my own intimate relationships, same dynamic, having that same feeling of confusion. Something's not right. I have no idea how to sort through this. I don't even know what's going on here, right? Again, this blindness, that's why I keep closing my eyes, because it is literally like my vision was blinded. I couldn't see clearly. And so this is really what's happening right now. We can see very, very clearly the patterns. When we're talking about disclosure, when we're talking about the controlling energies revealing themselves, this is actually what's happening for many of us. It's not about these outer circumstances, although in many ways the circumstances have triggered some kind of interesting, let's say, incubation process for us to be able to sit and see very clearly how these things are playing out in our own lives, and then how that extends out into our greater reality. So in addition to that, so what's interesting about this is that I'm seeing probably what I would say is at the simplest core, the very deepest wound that each of my parents carry. And for my mother, what I recognized again was this, it comes out, it looks like control, but it's more of this push-pull. It's a sense of, I want your help, I want to engage with you, but then when you come forward to assist, or you say, okay, how can I help? There is this backing off, right? And it feels like shame and guilt then, because it's like once the help comes in, and we know this too, right? This is a feeling that's very familiar for a lot of us. It's like, I want to engage, but then when it does, we feel unworthy of it and we push it away. So this creates a lot of confusion. and a lot of pain and a lot of hurt. But again, because we're not clearly seeing that pattern, then we have these reactions of like, why are you being so controlling? Or why are you being so mean? Or why are you being like this? And we just get triggered and we blow up and we don't even know where all of this is coming from. So being able to clearly now see the root from each of my parents that I hold as this structure within my reality. And now taking this forward into my own relationship, for the very first time now I have seen with absolute crystal clear vision where this is playing out. And I think what is challenging when we talk about twin flame relationships, and this is just a theory, but to me it seems like the reason we get so stuck in those situations is because this individual holds an immense amount of that same patterning and wounding that we hold from each parent. A lot of times relationships, when we connect with people, we often say we marry our parents or someone like our parents with those same patterns. I know for my marriage with my ex, that's really what it was. It was the same kind of patterning that my dad had. Not so much my mom, but now in this twin flame dynamic, I can clearly say, yes, a great deal from both aspects. And that's why it's been so utterly confusing and challenging to see, because you're needing to unlock both of those sides and to see where those patterns have really been set into the field and embedded in. So in this relationship, for the first time, I walked away from this conversation with this individual very clearly understanding what was going on, very clearly being able to see, now this is my own adult, right, person to person, where we have taken on the wounding each from our own parents, and now we're fighting, our wounding, I always say, our inner children are fighting, but it's really about those patterns that are unresolved, that are wrestling and trying to, get a breath, see the light of day kind of thing. So understanding now, my fear of speaking up, my fear of saying something when I was feeling confused, right? So a lot of confusion would always come in, and that really comes from my mother's patterns. And then the fear of speaking up, the fear of communicating, that would come in and just kind of totally lock me down to the point where I would just sit there like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to resolve this. Something is wrong. I don't understand. I can't figure this out, kind of situation. So, but the miracle with these energies is that we have the ability, if we are willing now at this time, to start to take all that we have learned, all that we have been looking at, all that we have been dissecting and analyzing in our own self, and to bring the light in to really pinpoint all of these areas now that we require to be released out of this control. Right? Again, it's not about the controlling energies that are out there. It's what's going on inside of ourselves. And once we start to release that, then we feel that shift and the awareness that, oh my gosh, this is what has been going on for my entire life. Wondering, why am I so confused? What is wrong with me? Why am I such a mess? These patterns are so locked down in our fields now. Yet the light is coming in to start to unravel, release, unlock everything that we have been holding on to. And from the human perspective, there is this sense of, okay, but this was always just life though. This is what I was born into. This is what happened. This is how it evolved in my life. Like, it's normal. It feels totally normal. And so as this light is coming in though and revealing these patterns, like I'm clearly seeing as this person is talking, like anger, like it's almost like in a lattice work, right? I'm like, oh my God, here is the signature of anger that's coming out. Even though every time this person would speak about a particular subject that was related to this kind of thing that was going on the other day, I was like, they're angry at me. I did something, right? Like I couldn't, what's going on here? Obviously we're sitting next to each other. It must be something about me. It must have to do something with me. But no, seeing the origin of where this anger is coming from their own childhood, their own experiences, which have nothing to do with me, right? We're all just operating from these root core wounds of the patterns that were enforced in childhood, always there from the beginning of time in our DNA, in our pattern, but now enforced in this lifetime through childhood. So having the grace and the compassion to be able to stand back and see that as well, and to allow the healing to come in first through me. And this is really what is most vital at this time. Of course, we are so used to wanting to help others and to heal the others. And we know even in these relationships, right, we talk about, oh, we have to heal ourselves first. Like, this is what's most important. It's all about healing me. Oh, okay, I get it. But yet, there's so many little nuances. It's easy to miss the core of what the healing truly is. And it's about seeing through our relationships what is going on inside of us. We cannot heal in true isolation. Isn't it interesting? But yet, we isolate in order to heal once we see the patterns. The only way we can see and know what we are holding is to interact with another. There is no way to see internally, because you're not going to be getting triggered. You're going to sit here. If you sit on a mountaintop all by yourself, you're going to sit there and you're going to be okay. There's nothing calling up that pain. There's nothing calling up that patterning. So relationships are vital to finding these wounds and to healing. And yet we don't heal through the relationship itself. We come back to our own pattern. Now we see, we witness, we understand. We allow the light to come in to help us shift into a broader, more compassionate, more expansive understanding of what's truly going on. And then we take this back to our relationships because we're operating from a higher level of being. So there isn't, this person is narcissistic, therefore blah, 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 I'm going to do. No, it's, this is what my pattern is. This is why we connect and we attract. This is where the correct template, source origin is. This is the alignment of source. So that when you go back operating from your source alignment, that relationship is changed forever. Because once you see that pattern clearly and you have understood it, you cannot operate out of misalignment. This is how we change the world. It's not about going outside of ourselves and making changes and doing things out there to help other people. We are literally rewriting our DNA. This is the miracle that's coming in now. The ability with these codons to pinpoint the patterns that we hold inside. In my last video, I talked about this, right? We don't go back to the parent and say, parent, this is what is wrong with you. This is what you did to me. No, we come here. We identify the pattern. We shift and rewrite here. And we send out a new type of virus. It's a healing virus. It's the antidote to that virus. We create immunity by virtue of recognizing the source and the origin of what is supposed to be and not interacting to where others are coming from their wounding. The only reason we would have a trigger, the only reason we would be attracted to some kind of dysfunction is if we hold it internal. And by attracted, I mean having the sense that we need to fix something. We need to stay engaged with this person. Otherwise, we'd be like, oh God, that's just crazy. I don't need that in my life. And we would walk away. So it's not a simple process. For myself, I know I tend to go deep into the analyzing, uncovering, discovering portion of it. For me, it works. For me, it makes sense. I think, yes, we can receive the light and make shifts, but I think for a lot of souls where this is deeply, deeply embedded, we call them tortured souls, right? This is what I'm seeing. It's like, why can't I get my life together? I try, and then I try harder, and I try even harder, and it only feels more and more and more painful. I'm applying, I'm putting in the effort, but it's backfiring. It doesn't feel good. These are the souls where these patterns are deeply embedded. Again, from the beginning of time. So this may not apply to everyone. But if this does resonate, just know that the light that is coming in is here to help you rewrite your story. In fact, I received this message in a dream. And I was telling my, I think it was one of the groups that I did, that my son was telling me that the way that he will remember a lot of his dreams is that he speaks it out loud to himself in the morning. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I'm going to try that. Because there is something about saying it out loud that creates this memory when it comes to dreams. I haven't been so successful with it in other endeavors, but this did happen. So I had a dream, and I was shown that the work that I did many, many lifetimes ago, that work energetically is here. And what I was being told was, okay, here I am now in this time, rewrite the story so that what was the past is your future, right? So we came in before all of this distortion and corruption happened with these energies. We were here to assist, to create these sacred temples. So this is here. And now take it and make that the future, which is always what it was intended to be anyway, right? When we talk about how do we manifest, how does physical energy come into form, there's this descension and then this ascension process that we have to abide by in many ways. So this isn't about going back to an old, outdated system. This is the original system that was meant to be here and yet is not online yet. So it is a rewrite. And just as I was saying, it's the rewrite process, which is the RNA. We may not be, right, inserting DNA, like people talk about changing the DNA. Well, the way the DNA changes is through the rewrite process, through the RNA. Through the transcription processing, actually rewriting your story. And this is where I always say it pays to be unsatisfied with the way things are. Because that's how your soul, how your energy field takes note of where the disturbances and the distortions are. I know people talk about just sitting and meditating and letting the light come in and letting it shift. I have never found that to work for me at all. I have always had to identify the disturbance. My mind has to be conscious of what is going on. What is not working for me before the shift will occur. And then when it does, it's miraculous. It's like an overnight change that happens. And that's literally what I am witnessing now, even in the health of my father, the health of my relationships. Overnight, there is a shift and a clarity and a freedom in all of these dynamics in my life right now. And of course, that's possible because of this wonderful energy that is coming in. But at least for myself, I had to really work with it. I had to pay attention. I had to be incredibly aware of where all these things are playing out. So these are the kind of things that we tend to pinpoint in session work. And in all the sessions I do, really, it's like, okay, where are the emotions and the feelings coming up? Where is this coming from? What is this related to? Let's mark this in the field so that when the energy does come in, you're clearly seeing it, understanding, able to shift away from that pattern. Because what happens a lot of times is like, yeah, we can be aware of it, but if we don't feel able to take a different step, to take a different approach to that pattern, right, which is outside of this distortion, it's coming from the healed, original template of that energy, coming from a place of health and wholeness rather than distortion. if we're not clearly able to see and feel this, it's going to feel like we're just kind of, you know, throwing something at it, like seeing if it hits the mark. Well, let me try this, which is oftentimes, if we look at twin flame dynamics, that's what we see, right? Well, let me try texting him, you know, twice instead of 3 times. Let me try putting a smiley face after it instead of a heart. Maybe that'll shift, right? Like, no, that's not the problem. It's the base wounding, the base patterns in our fields that we have got to see, and we have got to really circumnavigate from place now of health and wholeness, from the light, rather than the distortion. And all we really know is distortion, because that's all that has been here on this planet. Okay, I'm going to end this here. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Take good care, and we'll talk soon.